Hi, my name's Dr. Matt Hayler. I work at the University of Birmingham as a contemporary literature lecturer. When the Stillpoint team asked me to write something for them, I decided that I wanted to talk about my fascination with how the digitization of things might make a difference. Broadly, my research is interested in the relationship between us and our things, in the entanglement between our minds, bodies, objects, and environments. I don't think that you can understand what it means to be a human being without understanding that a huge suite of non-human things impact upon our perception of and action in the world. To be human is to be wrapped up in a life of stuff that often does its most potent work when we forget about it and think that we're acting alone. So I want to introduce some of the effects of digital technologies as they relate to humanity's concerns. Effects that we might not always think about. That's some of what I want to discuss. But I'm also fascinated by hyperbole, by how people talk about things in apocalyptic fashion, quite often regardless of whether those things actually matter or apart from whether they are actually proven. The Brexit debacle, for instance, has been based around hysterical, unsubstantiated, apocalyptic claims about the need for British independence and the inherent evils of the free movement of people. Climate change, however, must seemingly always be discussed with a quiet rationality that its provable and genuinely life-ending threat hardly deserves. At least one half of this equation seems to play out everywhere. We've been told, for example, that this or that digital thing is bad for us, that ebooks are the end of novels, that social media renders us as vacuous, narcissistic beasts devoid of empathy, that the internet is destroying our social skills and video games are ruining our children via a rich variety of cultural, physical, psychological, and spiritual assaults. These claims are probably not true, or at least not wholly neatly true. But digitization certainly changes the tenor of things in both positive and negative ways that we're still struggling to understand and to study, and which they're still evolving. This, to me, at least, is what makes them fascinating. So I want to introduce two ideas. One, I don't believe that any technology is neutral. Any new technology cannot escape having a politics being built into its structure and the ways in which it is used. The second idea, though, is that the presence of this or that technology also doesn't inherently mean that this or that result will definitely happen either. To think about these two ideas is to think about technological determinism. Still, perhaps the clearest example is the sloganeering surrounding gun control that began in the States in the late 20th century and continues full force today. Those calling for a greater restriction on guns began to deploy the blunt slogan, "Guns kill people." Now, this slogan at first glance seems to be accurate, a plain statement designed to shock precisely because of its unfiltered truth. The pro-gun lobby responded, however, with the far more famous slogan, "Guns don't kill people, people do." Sometimes rendered as "Guns don't kill people, people kill people." If we scrape away the politics just for a second, we might see why this slogan caught on with at least some gun advocates, because of its seeming to rationally cut through the opposition's stance. As a political move, it was just as much of a word game as "guns kill people," but it speaks to the agency that responsible gun owners dream could be the norm. The gun is simply a tool. There may be bad gun owners who should be punished, but we should no more ban all guns because of some bad owners than we should ban all knives when a tiny minority are used in violent crimes. Again, this is the gun lobby argument with a heck of a lot of the wider politics and nuanced thinking removed. But it is a useful reductionism because it gives us a binary. Guns kill people versus people kill people. The first option suddenly becomes ridiculous. Guns clearly don't kill people because they aren't sentient and they cannot operate themselves. But the second option is equally obtuse, as has been tragically demonstrated. People are obviously more prone to accidentally kill and more able to willfully commit extreme acts of violence because of the existence of guns. So we can nuance these statements a little further while still staying shy of the political discussion of, for example, the Second Amendment or the implementation of legislation around the world. The slogan "Guns kill people," for instance, can be reimagined as "People kill people because of the presence of guns." This is pure technological determinism. Because of the very existence of a technology, a certain set of effects will certainly come into being. Because of the car, for example, there will be travel, petrol stations, drive-in movie theatres, car crashes, and spaces for teenage romance. Because of this, then that. On the obverse, "Guns don't kill people, people kill people," can be reimagined as "people hurt others irrespective of the presence of guns." This viewpoint sees technologies as transparent, as wholly neutral, as something that we act with and through with no inherent effect of their own. The car doesn't make us travel, it allows it. We don't have to have petrol stations, we could have home deliveries or electric vehicles. Drive-in movies don't have to exist, just look at the UK. We don't have to have car crashes, we could set the speed limit to 10 miles an hour and only allow professional drivers. Cars don't have to enable teenagers a private space, we could raise the legal driving age to 21. In this view, it is humans which make decisions because technologies clearly cannot make them for us. What I think is most interesting is that in fact aspects of both positions must always be true, what some theorists of material cultures have called a soft determinism. Technologies don't outright determine what will happen, but they suggest, they guide, or they shape. Humans will likely always hurt other human beings, but there are some more likely ways and frequencies and quantities of harm when there is more or less access to guns. Cars don't force our hand, but there is something about our entanglement with them that has led to the occurrence and reoccurrence and likelihood of certain phenomena that now seem unavoidable or irreversible. Under any kind of scrutiny, both blunt determinism and the suggestion that technologies are wholly neutral make for completely indefensible stances and wonderful stories. There is something tremendously appealing about being able to pass both blame and cause onto a non-human agent. It wasn't us, it was our things. But there is also something equally attractive in positioning a strong human agency with fierce punishment for those who err because the blame lies wholly with them. Our things do nothing. We choose how to act. As I've written about elsewhere, the material form that a book takes, whether it's printed or digitized, it does have an impact. It does affect how we receive information. And played out over hundreds of billions of reading engagements over time, it does start to have an effect that we can notice. How significant a change in form might be is still being studied, but a book's change will have an effect. The naked determinist might say that it will definitely do X. The anti-determinist will say that it will do nothing. We make the choices. The truth, I suspect, as ever, is likely in between these camps. The effects of new technologies are as goal-directed and predictable as biological evolution, which means that they're not at all. It's never if this, then that. It's because of this confluence of things at this time, in this environment, then this thing or set of things that we can trace only after the fact became more likely to occur, and it sometimes did. This, sadly, is not the sexy origin story of the automobile or of the printing press or of the digital text that is destroying reading. But if nothing else, Jane Austen's beautiful call out to the reader at the end of Northanger Abbey, that we might note from the telltale compression of the pages before us that we are all hastening together to perfect felicity. This just doesn't work on an iPad. The reassuring wedge of the pages that Austen references, moving from the left hand to the right hand as we progress through the story, it's lost. Though who knows what new signifying forces, based on the materiality of phones and tablets, might come to be referenced by third or fourth or fifth generation digitally literate authors. Another aspect of the argument against new and digital technologies is that they are often meant to be somehow bad for our brains. This is the camp of the new generation of apocalyptic and scientistic technological determinists. And we sadly have a popular press which continues to be all too happy to reproduce the claims of commentators such as Baroness Susan Greenfield, who claimed that internet use is responsible for rewiring our brains and for the increase in autism diagnoses over the last 2 decades or so. Something that I've been trying to argue recently is that a digital humanity is more aware of the misrepresentations of the extent and significance of neural plasticity, and the expansion and better implementation of diagnostic criteria would be a field that can better respond to popular debate. I think that this is really important. I think that studies of cognition and attention need to make their way into any rich understanding of what reading and technological use is in the 21st century for exactly this reason. For fighting the pure technological determinists on their own territory by exploring what things really do, rather than stating what we suspect that they might do based on bad assumptions. But to speak to the other side of this, technology does always do something. Technology always shapes how we conceive of the aspects of the world that it enables or assists us in touching, and this isn't always positive. Writing in the Washington Post in 2013, Anne Hornaday discussed the success of a number of movies depicting Black Americans, focusing in particular on 12 Years a Slave and director Steve McQueen's commitment to accurately capturing black skin on film. If you'll forgive me a longish quotation, Hornaday and McQueen explain this expertly. Hornaday says, "The fact that audiences are seeing such a varied, nuanced spectrum of black skin isn't just a matter of poetics, but of politics, and the advent of digital filmmaking. For the first 100 years of cinema, when images were captured on celluloid and processed photochemically, disregard for black skin and its subtle shadings was inscribed into the technology itself. From how film stock emulsions and light meters were calibrated, to the models used as standards for adjusting colour and tone. That embedded racism extended into the aesthetics of the medium itself, which from its very beginnings was predicated on the denigration and erasure of the black body. The result was that if black people were visible at all, their images would often be painfully caricatured or otherwise distorted, either ashy and washed out or featureless points of contrast within the frame. As 12 Years a Slave director Steve McQueen said in Toronto after the film's premiere there, "I remember growing up and seeing Sidney Poitier sweating in the Heat of the Night. And obviously that was because it's very hot in the south, but also he was sweating because he had tons of light thrown on him, because the film stock wasn't sensitive enough for black skin." So here's another way that digital is different, and a way that technology isn't always neatly deterministic. We are currently seeing more nuanced depictions of the full range of human appearance because of a new technological affordance. But such affordances could have been there all along if only our priorities had been different. There's nothing inherently racist about cinema or celluloid. As we've noted, this is a relation of guns don't kill people. But the underlying assumptions and priorities of a culture shape the development and implementation of technological use. But it's also not as simple as the stance that technology is neutral, that it is only people who kill people, because technology does nudge, it does shape. Black skin has historically been harder to light for photography, in particular next to white skin and vice versa. That solving contrast issues is difficult is a fact of our machinery. That we didn't care about solving that problem until very recently was part of our culture. To state it plainly, digital film is not somehow less racist than celluloid, but it is more easily put to egalitarian depictions. And if we turn to the news and we bring back the politics, mobile phone cameras and guns in the hands of police have recently shown how technologies can report on and write racism into the world far too clearly. I say all of this because I believe in an expansive definition of the digital humanities that includes space for humanities scholars to find new ways into thinking about what digital technologies might do. And to my mind, part of this has to be tackling reductive mainstream discourses head on. So I hope that this will be of interest as a way into thinking about what differences digitization might make. Put most simply, I think that we need to be able to talk about change without implying inevitability, and talk about harms and goods without seeing them as either defining what a technology is or seeing these effects as somehow able to float free from the origins of a device's materiality. Technologies matter, but they don't yet control us. Cool. Thank you very much to the Still Point team for inviting me to speak. And yeah, thank you. Bye.